Indictments coming from the Mueller team of more Russians, this time for the hacking. To get into it all, let's bring in former Deputy Independent Counsel Saul Weisenberg, San Francisco attorney and RNC committeewoman from California, Harmeet Dhillon, and Washington attorney and chair of the D.C. Democratic Party, Scott Bolden. It's great to see all of you. We got a lot of news to get through tonight. Tom Rooney, who's on the House Intel Committee, I don't think he's given one interview about the probe yet. But he said today on the House Intel side, he said this thing should wrap up. From what he has seen behind closed doors, there's no collusion. They've seen no evidence of that. And he said, you know, this thing we should end this thing. On the Mueller thing, he said, well, that has to keep going. I'm not going to speak to that. But he was really adamant. Saul, given what we know now, what the focus is of this investigation, what are the key points?
Well, the key points are waiting for Bob Mueller, and we just don't know what he's doing. He's kept a very tight ship over there. I'm not at all surprised by the report of the committee member. And also, you have to remember, however, a lot of the people who have gone in to testify have refused to do so, but they don't have the power anywhere near the power that Bob Mueller has. Now, having said that, what we do know publicly right now, including what people have said about how they were questioned by Mueller, is that we still don't have on the public record any evidence of collusion by Trump or people closely affiliated with Trump. That's just the way it is. You have a little bit of stuff about Papadopoulos, but he's a very minor figure.
No.
Again, this is on the collusion question.
Yeah. Now, let's get to Andrew McCabe. Scott, let's go to you on this. Andrew McCabe, former deputy director of the FBI, is now, it looks like the IG is going to come down on him hard because he directed FBI staff to share information about the ongoing investigation, October 2016, with the media.
Well, he may have shared it himself. I mean, they wanted to get some information out to the New York Times, and they actually set it up, the PR people at the FBI. If he made a bad judgment call and he used that information that was confidential when he shared it to kind of balance out the article, then certainly he's going to be disciplined. But the reality is, Andrew McCabe is a Republican, one. And two, in that article, he was arguing for the FBI to continue to investigate HRC. And as a result...
There's a dispute about that. There are two different accounts. All the
reports I've read say that.
Well, there are two different accounts. I think the New York Times lays it out. Two different accounts. Some say he actually wanted the Hillary investigation not to go forward. And then I think his champions say, oh, no. He said, FBI, you can do whatever you want. But senior Justice Department officials disagreed.
Those are diametrically opposed positions, so facts don't lie, and they don't go away.
Scott,
he's
this guy,
a Republican,
Andrew, I don't care what he is.
But
Republicans screw things up all the time.
Why are Republicans obsessed with Andrew McCabe?
And Harmeet, I think you'll want to chime in on this. Andrew McCabe is best buds with Jim Comey. Okay, very close. Very close. I didn't say it was a crime, Scott. But he was the lead in the Hillary email investigation and then took a lead in the Trump investigation. That's the problem. And if you're pushing stories to the Wall Street Journal in October 2016, in addition to the concerns about his wife and everything else, you can't blame Donald Trump thinking this guy should never have been touching my case, even just given his wife's connection to Terry McAuliffe. Harmeet.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Laura. What we're seeing here is just one more brushstroke in a painting, and all of these strokes are coming together to show that there was an entire culture at the FBI and even, some of the actions that they've taken with regard to the FISA court that show a complete lack of regard for the normal conflict of interest rules, for the normal ethics that would apply. These are people who have been making false representations to a court. And so nothing that's coming out here with regard to McCabe or any of these other players is surprising to me. It's just surprising that they're being allowed to get away with it and distract all of us from what should be going on, what the president should be focusing on in the country moving forward. And they've been successful in bogging him down. So that's the disappointing part of this.
Ken Starr, Saul, today made an interesting comment about the scope of this investigation. We're hearing stuff about Jared Kushner. We're hearing things about Ivanka Trump now. This is what he said.
I think it's beyond his mandate. The mandate is what happened during the 2016 election in terms of collusion. That's the key idea. So here's what I think is happening. I think Bob Mueller is finding out information that is leading him back to the Deputy Attorney General.
Saul, your comments on that?
Well, there's no question that it's outside the mandate in terms of the specific items covered. But remember, the mandate says if there's any crime that directly arises from the investigation, he can look at it. But we know from Rod Rosenstein's testimony that he's got to go to Rod Rosenstein if any of those things occur, and he's got to get the agreement of Rosenstein. So the real story here, I don't think there's any doubt he would have gotten authorization. The story is, we know from the Manafort indictment and the Gates indictment, all you have to do is look at it, that he got authorization long ago to go beyond the four corners, at least the specific things he's supposed to be looking at. And I'm surprised it hadn't, been commented on that much earlier. If I could go back for 1 minute to McCabe, to me, the two main things about McCabe that we have to keep going back to: one, the gross conflict of interest. He should not have been involved in either the email or the Clinton Foundation investigation, which, if you believe news reports, he kept agents from looking at things. And number two, he is responsible for that FISA warrant. And that FISA warrant, he has admitted, and the Schiff memo did not contradict this, that if they had not had the Steele dossier, they would not have even submitted that. And that's a shocking thing. That's a shocking thing, that FISA warrant.
And the Devin Nunes letter today, Scott, where he went into chapter and verse about the DOJ guidelines. He's in part, the accuracy of information contained within FISA applications is of utmost importance. Only documented and verified information may be used to support FBI applications, FISA to the FISA court. They did not verify the outrageous allegations in this dossier, and they couldn't. There was no way for them to, yet that was at the core of this application. Was a federal statute violated in their submission of this FISA application?
We'll certainly never know that. But it seems to me the fundamental difference between the Democrats and Republicans, obviously, is the Republicans think it was the heart of that FISA warrant, and the Democrats think it was part of it. We know back in September of 2016 that the intel agencies were picking up these communications and were doing their own investigation. You may not, if you didn't verify everything in the FISA warrant, if you didn't document everything, that means there were other things in that FISA warrant that told you that the Trump administration or the campaign needed to be investigated. And by the way, there's a term called corroboration that Saul knows very well. If everything in that FISA warrant was corroborated, then what are we talking about then? I mean, you make a big deal out of this FISA warrant, but they went back to the FISA judges 3 or 4 times.
Scott.
Well, of course they are. And what does he have to do with Donald Trump?
And it says has a very high
threshold. Why did 4 judges do it over and over again? Why?
Because they weren't told that Hillary Clinton paid for the dossier.
Let's say they were, and even they did reference it as a political piece.
Saul, do you think?
Don't know that.
Let's just give down a breath.
It's just all conjecture on the Republicans' part.
Do you think that a federal judge on the FISA court, if he knew what happened with this dossier and who paid for it, that they would have not at least gone back to the lawyer and said, is this all you have? Do you have anything else? Because this seems like a direct conflict of interest. I mean, go ahead, Saul.
They would have absolutely asked further questions. Now, Scott makes one fair point. When they go back 3 times,
not just fair point. Did I get a good point? Give it to me.
It's a good point. I'll be fair if you let me compliment you. When they do go back 3 times, they have to have some kind of new information about Page. But it doesn't change, and we don't know what that is. But it doesn't change the fact, and this is what people aren't picking up on, with the exception of a couple of writers like Andrew McCarthy. Steele himself could have been the most credible person in the world, but almost all of his information was completely unverified. That's shocking, and actually that's something the FISA judges should have to answer for someday or explain. I'd like to hear about that. I don't care whether they're Republicans or voted for Harold Stassen or what.
Yeah, I don't care what their political affiliation is. Harmeet, last word.
Yeah, no, I was going to agree that the misrepresentations to the FISA court cannot be minimized here. They are critical and central to the issuance of this warrant every single time. And that leads to questions about the FISA whole situation and whether it's open to abuses like this. But the other thing I think is important is what Devin Nunes has said in his letter today. It's not just lying to the FISA court, but it is obstruction of justice. It is conspiracy to violate the civil rights of American citizens.
Yeah. I don't
and
agree
that
with
is
that.
civil
That's-
and criminal
that's
civil
silly.
rights violations.
But none of it's proven.
Well, the Fourth
None of it's
Amendment is
proven.
very
Just
important to
conjecture.
some of us.
Guys,
Okay,
there's
Scott?
a bullet. There's a bulleted series of violations that he says are potential. I think the one that's pretty obvious is the guidelines. I think they didn't verify the claims in that dossier. Phenomenal panel, and I can't believe Saul complimented Scott. That's never happened
Once
before.
a month,
right,
once a
once a
month,
day.
you know.
Okay. And Saul smiled. Saul smiled at least 3 times in this segment, and Harmeet did as well. So this is all good. All right, guys. We told you last night how leftists like Barbara Streisand, Scott's good friends with her, are trying to blame the Florida school shooting on Trump. Yes, that's true. But now there's new information that an Obama-era school policy might have